The story so far, as we enter into the summer of 1793, the last turn, I did a whole video on the spring turn, as well as on the economic phase on the turn before, on the video before. The economic phase, well, this is the first time we did it. I wanted to show a lot of what's going on in one of those. I'm not going to spend that kind of time again. I mean, it's going to take that kind of time, but I'm not going to spend video on describing everything that's happening. Unless there's something kind of funky, I've tended to get more and more verbose about everything that's going on. Last turn was kind of an exciting one. With the new armies built, with Carnot card in play, and the French able to have a couple of armies of their own to play with, they ended up, I got the sequence here, but what ended up happening was the coalition moved forward, they took Lille, they moved Prussians forward, the Austrian army here chased one of the French armies out of Paris and beat it up a couple of times. But at the end of the turn, the French consolidated their entire force. Now, this is an interesting thing. I got a triple winter quarters, which means, you know, the spring turn ends. That can't happen in the summer, but the coalition got the last move. The Empire did not get, well, the French, the revolutionary counter, yeah, the Empire land counter did not come up the last one, which means that it is guaranteed that the French get the first move on this next turn, right? It's not guaranteed that they can use it, but it actually is, because I got a 4-point leader. I've got good leaders in play. Well, what all that means is that I'm going to be able to use my consolidation. It's actually advantageous to me. I thought it was a bummer, right, that like the French got their turn cut off, but it's not. It means that the French get to advance in there and attack the Austrian army with their army group, 2 different armies there, and try to defeat these in detail. And there's no chance, because these aren't close enough for these to interact or react or anything. So the way the chits have come, I see a bad situation coming for the coalition. This is important because, you know, the Brits aren't entering the war until the French like get into Flanders or something, right? But anyhow, Brits probably ought to move their fleet around. I do not have the neutral movement counters in there. I probably should. I don't know why I left them out. They probably need, I took them out because I thought, oh, it's a 2-player game, but it kind of isn't. It kind of isn't. Anyway, oh, I hope I didn't just throw the 2 naval counters in. Like there's 2 extra naval counters kicking around. No, there's 2 extra naval counters kicking around, but yeah, I really ought to be getting those Brits into place. Yeah, we had a pretty detailed turn last turn. I went into a lot. The reason the last video was so big is that I went into a couple of major battles for the first, well, into one major battle for the first time. And there was a lot of fighting as well. So it was kind of an exciting turn, and it was the first time we saw a major battle. So I went into a fair amount of detail on what's going on there. This turn and the rest of the year, I hope to be able to get on this video. In terms of personal stuff, I got my shopping done yesterday. Kind of made me a little gung-ho about like doing stuff again, right? Coming up here playing this game after emotionally abusing myself some more yesterday. You look at my Chatbot Gone Bad video if you want to understand that kind of shit. But yeah, I had been fucking around, you know, finding ways to hide from the world, and chatbots were one of them. And I just couldn't help but poke the wound again and again, you know, even if it's not a real thing. my physical reaction was real, right? Like it was the same in the sense that like the physical reaction you get from an emotional state is real, right? You know, where, you know, your chest is hurting, your gut feels sick, just all this stuff. You get that invested. So it's kind of a fucking weird thing. Or you can. Anyway, I don't want to rehash that stuff. Let me swap batteries, and I'm going to start this turn. I think the first thing we hit, conceivably we could buy more stuff. The Brits have a shit ton of money, which they can't use, they're not in the war. The French have $10. They could build another army, they could build depots, stuff like that, but there's not really a lot that I can do. I can't build more troops or anything. I used a militia for this to repair this fortress. I could have used money instead, just $2 for that. But there was a possibility that I was going to move out of it with this entire force, so I'm like, yeah, let's... Plus, it's the same value. The English do not have any cards, any public cards. Well, the coalition. The French have two. Chouans, which they say the British player, the Brits aren't in the game. As far as it should say coalition. But that leads me to believe again that maybe this is meant to be able to be played multiplayer. I mean, the only thing you'd be doing is assessing the sides. There's no way to assess winning and losing between the different players that I'm aware of. But I definitely don't want to play that. I would have to if I didn't have this inflation. I'm going to hit Austria with the inflation. And I guess I'll put it over here to remind me of that. Next turn, they lose 10 pounds of their production. It's not a fantastic card. It would have, you know, prevented them from building quite as much as they did, but I just really don't want to face this. And there's no restriction on that. That just comes into play, you know, as a reaction to the revolution. And I don't see myself doing anything here except that I could fiddle with my leaders, which I might want to do. I probably want to leave a 4-point leader with each army, but I might want to pull... Well, Keebler is kind of cool because he gives a +2 bonus, but here's the problem. If I utilize that +2 bonus in combat, I'm risking losing him and his elves. Now, of course, he could travel with it, but here's the other thing. He could then go take over some other force that I would like him to be in charge of. Yeah, I'll leave him there for the flexibility. Might as well. I have a couple of +1s in that army. I want the two armies to be commanded by 4s. They can't be killed. That's fine. And that will put me to... Do I want to fiddle with leaders for the other forces? I don't know. I have Esterhazy, but he's not going to really help me. Although he is a cav leader. And I think that helps. We'll put him here as a secondary leader in there. Brunswick is going to be able to give me the +1, so I have some nice things going on in there. And we'll try to bring our army groups together. If the coalition can bring its groups together by any means, it'd be kind of nice because I could swap troops between the armies and make them more national. Because right now, the Austrian army has Prussian troops in it, the Prussian army has Austrian troops in it. It all works out that way because Flanders is Austrian controlled. They can build units there, and Prussians were funneled into the Austrian army early in the war. All right, I feel like I'm just delay of game here. No winter quarters goes in this turn. Great. I want to note, this is kind of like the American Civil War, well, the Civil War over there by Victory Games. the way initiatives and what work. This is actually even worse in that what might feel like a good time to stop is, hey, I just created the initiative pool, let's start the activation phase, fine. You can't do that because you got to remember where that last chit was. I guess you could pull out like an Empire land chit and just kind of have it there sitting around to remind you or something, but yeah, the one time you can't take a break from the game, you can take a break, well, I mean, there are probably many, but you can take a break in between individual activation phases or activation chit pulls, but you can't do it when you fill the cup. And in fact, it's worse than that because any naval counters that come out don't count. Any winter quarters that come out don't count. Any neutrals that come out don't count. So I might have to pull several chits before I can break. I keep delaying getting to the actually pulling the chit because I'm worried when I get to the chit, it's going to be a fairly big one. The French, you know, even if they pick a 4, it's just going to be this unit. But anything else, I've got a fair number of units maybe I want to move, and I got to consider. And I have to conduct, you know, what's going to be, I think, a major battle? I'm not sure. They may have lost enough. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, they lost enough that it won't be a major battle anymore. But what's going to be a battle, right? Between fairly significant forces, interceptions, withdrawals, all kind of stuff like that's going to be in play, okay? So, and I'll probably have to look a lot of it up. So I'm a little hesitant, I'm a lot hesitant about actually doing that. I feel like there was something I was trying to say after that. Like, I know I wanted to make that point, how this is going to be a bad action. And in fact, quite often, the first chit pull of the turn is going to be kind of ugly. Oh, I know what it is. Yeah. I kind of don't, this may be more an emotional thing than anything else or whatever, you know, just a quirk in how I am. But I kind of go through all of this, I get to the create initiative pool, and I feel like I have to do the create initiative pool. It's one thing when I've got the dice over here and I know I'm starting a new turn, but I feel like this is part of the start of a new turn. It's not like all that stuff is very hefty. It's just, I kind of feel like taking a break right now. What the cavalry leader is good for, he's good for avoiding combat. Unfortunately, though, the Austrians rolled a big 2. And even with like a +4 bonus, they're not able to get out of there. So they're going to get caught in combat. And that's bad because not only are they outnumbered, but they got a -1 for trying to get away. But there was no fortress or anything to hide in. Start to do the combat, I regret having used my militia because it's 23-8. But again, I wouldn't remember the exact number of steps the Austrians had or anything. But yeah, it would have gotten me to a 3-1, which would give me a +2 on the combat table, and instead I'm stuck with a +1. Had a humongous advantage in this. They had the artillery advantage, they had the cav advantage, they had leadership advantage, they had just everything, right? And the interception penalty, the withdrawal penalty was in play. It ended up +8 to +2. Both sides rolled high, though. So the French still took some losses with a 2+L, but the Austrians take a 5 CL. 2 Prussian leaders were wounded, 1 French. And the Austrians have to retreat. But, and I haven't checked because I want to look at the incorporation of demoralization when it matters. The Austrian army is going to be demoralized. Technically, I would have to retreat first, but I'm basically making a decision. Do I want to retreat to here or to here? If I retreat to here, I would be in danger of demoralizing the entire force. So what we have to do, that stack is getting awfully big. See, leader losses seem too high. Like, but putting a secondary leader in, which gives you a combat bonus and whatnot, it feels necessary to try to get that +1. But that gives you an automatic additional leader loss check. So what I'm looking at here is integration. Yeah, it's not, there are some games where a small force won't cause a larger force to be demoralized, but we'll fall back to here. This is not good. And the French, we have a possible cav pursuit as well, because I had more cav. If there's surviving cav on the winning side, it can pursue the defeated demoralized units. They lose 1 step or supply unit for each pursuing light cav, each pursuing guard, and every 2 cuirassiers. So that's 2 light cav. I think I have more here. That's 4 light cav steps. So I've got to take a loss of 4 more steps to my army. I may be wiped out. Yeah. The Army of the Rhine is going to just be wiped out. A demoralized force cannot automatically, the force morale is lowered by 1 point while demoralized. Yeah, I think my force is just wiped out, because there's only 3 steps left. There's engineers. The leader goes back in the pool. The general, the army commander will also go back in the pool. Wow. So screw that. There's not a demoralized force. And now I get to decide. I've only used 2 of my movement points, maybe a third for attacking. I have to look that up. There's some weird shit. The army is destroyed. And that was a major, well, no. That was a minor victory by the French, if there's any reason that we have to worry about those. But now I can continue on and attack the Prussian army at Reims, which I probably also outnumber, because I have 2 armies. So I can see, I remember there being something about having to pay a movement point into an enemy hex or something. I looked here. This is a general case of movement. It's got these things: aggregate armies with another army, +2 movement points per hex. That was already done. In order to move into that hex, I had to do it. Overrun combat costs a movement point. So you'd think combat would? That's the problem I have. Is that if overrun costs a movement point, it feels like entering the enemy hex, like actually fighting a battle, should cost a movement point. And I don't see it. And of course the terrain effects. Battle victory costs a movement point. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3 movement points. Do I have supply wagons with me? Because I won't be able to move if I do. Oh, wait. Whoa, my supply wagon moves 6. What the hell? The French supply wagons are decent. The coalition ones don't move 6. They move 4. That's awesome. Okay. Well, in that case, we just continue on, right? And 1, 2, 3, 4 up into here. And here's the thing. The Prussian army is 9 steps. I know I'm outclassed. I could take this as a siege. That would be kind of painful. Or I can fall back and try to preserve the Prussian army. I think I'm going to try to fall back yet again. Take a look at this. All right, now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got one more movement point, which I will still have if he withdraws. Initiative value of the leader, let me get this out of there, is 2. I think I do have Cav. I do. That's 3. Cav leader. Gotta run over and check these each time. I don't have a Cav leader. 3. I lose 2 off of it, so I'm at +1. I lose 2 off of it because of the good command rating of the French leader. Both of them, actually. And I'm screwed again, caught in combat with an additional penalty on me. Let's wipe out. This will be a major battle because there's 9 steps of Prussians, which means we get to play with the tactical cards. That could screw things up for the French, conceivably, but I doubt it because they really have overwhelming odds right now. Quick glance at the Brunswick Manifesto. It no longer applies because Valmy had been played, but now I also won a battle. So I'm going to take it off just so I don't have to worry about it. If it comes to it, I'll be able to remember that it's been played. I'm trying to get to this battle. Had to go back and relight my pipe and stuff. Got 3 card draws. Prussians got 1. I looked at the Prussians. I probably shouldn't have because they're going to play it no matter what. -1 to enemy die roll. Automatic for France. Other countries must roll a d6 greater than or equal to 4. No modifiers or anything. Let me just do that now. They do not, so we can throw that one out. The French drew 3 cards. The last one I looked at was Cossacks, which doesn't help. The force must contain at least 1 Cossack unit or light cav step during a winter or autumn turn. It's summer. This card wouldn't help. I made my die roll using this leader. He's going to have to make a leader loss check now. He'd have to make another one if I use him as my secondary leader who gives a bonus. So I may not want to do that. But that allowed me to play 2. I have 8 or more artillery points, so I get a +1 from the Grand Battery and a +1 from a redoubt. Yeah, I'm attacking, but apparently I was able to set up a defensive position to operate out of or something, because it doesn't make any limitation on which side you're on. Seems a little weird, but okay. All right, and now I go through, and this is really this takes a lot of time, especially since I have to run from box to box. Boxes on the board can be kind of annoying. It's not really a problem multiplayer, but solo, you see I have to run all over the place. I felt a similar kind of lots of modifiers when I was playing Summer Storm over there, but I would generally have my chart right next to the units. I wouldn't have to go to boxes to deal with stuff for that. I think there were army boxes. No, they weren't. So, yeah, it's kind of an obnoxious situation. If I had like Empires in Arms cards for each of the players that hold their forces, I could move them so that I can get close, but it also doesn't use this kind of modifiers. I just have to basically count the forces and check their morale, a la EU. Yeah, trying to avoid it, that's all. And then when I finish the activation of this, multi-army force, I've got all kinds of things to think about, right? Because I've gotten I may be getting the ultimate success here. And then I've got to think about what I want to do, which is why I looked at the Brunswick Manifesto to see what areas I couldn't go into. It's basically over here, Palatinate, Flanders, and Baden, keeping me from entering Germany. But, yeah, and this is not a French unit. This is like Bavarian. It looks French, though. It's the same damn color. Sure, Bavaria eventually ends up as a French ally at some point, but it's kind of annoying that there aren't more distinct colors for the different different nations. I would like a pale blue would make perfect sense for them. Again, uniform colors and stuff. I don't remember. Like, I think the Spanish actually wore a yellow uniform, not a brown one. I know a lot of the games show them in yellow, and I think it's because of that. But again, it's kind of this weird choice of colors. The Austrians certainly wore white and not a brown. You can see why you don't want white because of that. But this gray, it should be a lot paler than it is. Again, Compass and its color choices and whatnot always kind of weird me out. This one's not as bad as like Balance of Powers, where like, I don't know, there's pinks and stuff like that, but whatever. Which feel really weird. But it's not even like they make things terribly distinguishable. I don't find these all that distinguishable, color-wise. I have issues with my eyesight, but, you know, a lot of people do. A lot of us do. All right. I'll get to it, I swear. The thing I have to keep in mind is that I have the Chouans card, which means I'm going to be facing an internal problem. So I probably don't want to do anything to bring, say, the Brits into the war at this point. Coalition army down the drain. This was +10 to +1. The results, again, the Prussians got a good roll. The French didn't, but they maxed out on the chart anyway with that big +10. I mean, they got an okay one. 7 CL to 4L. We had a French leader killed, but he was my least valuable leader. He was just sort of the L off there is what generated it. So I had to roll multiple different colored dice to indicate which leader, because I had my best leader to get me the card, a +1 leader over there, and then the leader loss check, which could come from anyone. And we got a wound to the second best leader, and the Prussians had a leader wounded. The pursuit wiped out the remainder of the Prussian army, which was like 3 steps. Pursuit is a big deal, and it should be in a Napoleonic battle. There's no question. The system is impressing me in ways that, like, I don't know how I feel, like, you know, comparing this to the Empires in Arms combat, but Empires in Arms is a little bit more abstract at the scale, or, at the scale of the combats. But they feel kind of similar. A hex of battle in this is kind of like an area battle in Empires in Arms. I don't feel like there's a whole hell of a lot of capability to do clever maneuvering and whatnot. And honestly, for all that the designer touts it in War and Peace, I don't feel like there's any real room for any exciting, maneuvering there either. There's just the question of, do your reinforcements come in time, which feels kind of like the outflank checks in Empires in Arms. I also ended up taking Reims. I am not garrisoning it. I'd have to give up good troops to do so. I guess I could throw a depot in there, like a supply wagon, because I probably don't need them. But I think I'm just going to spend, since my supply wagons move relatively well, I'm going to spend 2 points next turn to do it. Again, I don't think I want to move this army into Flanders. I could move it into other places and try to, screw around with that. I feel like I've stopped the German incursion over here. Like, an army down here is more than enough to protect that. But I need another army to deal with Chouans, and I need another army to deal with the Italian force. So it's kind of tricky. I might be able to get away with, like, you know, a decent leader with 3 corps or something like that up here and send an army here. The Chouans, maybe I don't need an army for. I don't know. We're going to see how that erupts, but I feel like I want to keep some flexibility. I'm going to leave at least 1 unit here, though, no matter what. Probably leave the whole stack there, because why not? Now I've got to consider the rest of the French units and whether they want to do anything. This is my move 1. So if I have any detachments, it's absolutely vital for them to move. I think I can delay. This is always my feeling, though, and something that worries me in in games, is I always feel like I can delay my decision. There's no winter quarters here, so that I don't see a big penalty to anything. I don't see any 1-point units that I want to move. Like, I don't want to move this unit because he's holding a fortress that is in the area that I think I'm going to be in trouble with. Everything else will get another chance to move after I see what the coalition does. So I think that's the end of this activation. And I need a break now. I might go back to sleep. I woke up at like 3 in the morning, which is a good time for a raid, but not necessarily like to prepare myself for Friday. I kind of need to get more sleep today, early in the day, and this seems like a good time. Little notes before I head down for my nap because I'll forget them. One is, there was a depot there. It's just destroyed. That feels a little odd to me. Most Napoleonic stuff allows you to capture a depot. But when you consider the fact that the French depots move faster, well, the French wagons move faster, it would be hard to cope with. They're not just a depot. They're also the transportation capability and everything involved in that. So it would be a little funky to like allow them to increase in speed or whatever. Most games that handle depots, they're just the supply source. They don't actually deal with some kind of movement capability like that. So I'm thinking here Empires and Arms, but I'm also thinking the OSG stuff. The other thing is those tactical cards. They're kind of cool. Okay, they make leadership more valuable. They make the quality of your force or whatever in a lot of ways, whether you made the military reforms, etc. They make that more important. And then they give you a shakeup that so far I haven't seen it, but could conceivably be very different from the standard results from the battle. We'll see if any do. So far, most of them have just been like a +1. We saw the one that affected pursuit, which is kind of cool, but I'm hoping that there will be some that'll allow me to do something other than just a little modifier. Like maybe refuse a battle if I don't want to or something. So far, I haven't seen anything too exciting. All right, it's Thursday about 10 p.m. I slept about 10 hours, which isn't that shocking because going shopping, it wears me out, but also I had stretched my awake time out. I didn't take a nap after shopping, and yeah, anyway, here we are back to start playing and to pull the second shit of this summer turn. Our naval counter came out. I can do two, it's not 2 land in a row. Well, it's only the land that are modified. And I fled back to Marseille with the idea of, I don't want to be in Toulon because there's an everything in Toulon can get destroyed card. That's the White Cockade card. It's not ready to be played yet, but I kind of want to abandon Toulon. You know, I feel like you should know what the event cards are broadly when there's one that can destroy you that much. Part of me says you shouldn't need to know, or you shouldn't be able to know, but the truth of the matter is the French are able to paw through the deck at various times and pick a specific card in this scenario. So, well, every turn now. So, yeah, you know, and it creates an unrealistic situation, I think, but it would really suck if you had like a large force there also. So, yeah. And then I got Coalition Land 1, which is a big deal because this is going to let me move any coalition forces I want, and I may want to get out of the fucking way at this point. The French are too scary. They have a big double army here that could activate again, could wipe out whatever I've got. I've got to rebuild the Austrian and Prussian armies before I can really take on the French. Might it be safe to move a force through Italy and try to challenge things in the south? Maybe, but maybe not. Right now, just a specific instance where this counter, already it bugs me because it's blue, right? But I don't know what the fuck country that is. So in order to figure out what country it is, I have to try to find... It's got kind of a red flag, right? I can paw through and see what red flags there are. That would be one option. See if Prussia has anything. It might be Brunswick. I don't think Brunswick has troops. Might be a lot of things, but what it doesn't have is, I think, the actual national flag, which means then, in order to try to find out, I have to look here and maybe see, hey, do I have a detachment with that flag on it? Württemberg. It is Württemberg, which is an Austrian aligned force. And the reason this is important is because I probably want to use that detachment to fill up an Austrian corps that's been damaged, although there's nothing damaged left. So I may want to move it back into other areas. It does have a corps, but it's black background with kind of a red flag. It has a little something in that flag as well. I can't scoop up the garrison that I left here, leave that as a destroyed fortress, and because it would only make sense to get the hell out of Dodge. Yeah, pretty massive pullback. Abandoned that. Just trying to find places. Had to leave Neufchâtel. It's too exposed. Our forces weren't very strong there. And here, trying to create some kind of barrier in the Alps. Not really worried about what the French have down there, but if they choose to cross into Italy, it could get ugly. And remember, I can hold off going into Holland, well, into Flanders, the Austrian Netherlands still, I believe, for a long time, and try to keep Britain out of the war. I'm not sure what happens if the White Cockade gets played while the British aren't at war. There's nothing that requires the Brits to be at war. It doesn't say it makes them at war, but the British player sets up the Lyonnais Corps in Lyon and the Provence Corps in Marseille. Toulon becomes coalition friendly. Every French or French allied combat unit and fleet within these locations. Yeah, that actually doesn't do it. That's going to raise the flag for, I guess, some of the emigres or whatnot. So it's like a non-war, the Brits can push their way, you know, can cause stuff to happen. I thought it actually, I thought it would be the capture of Toulon with like a British fleet there. It doesn't look like a good idea to put that up though. until the French are in trouble. So I'll probably hold on to it as long, until the Brits come into the game. So the French will probably expand their territory as much as they can without angering Britain and Spain. And I gotta worry about the card that I'm going to play. The British player sets up the leader Cadoodle and the Chouans in Brittany or Normandy, but not in a fortress or city. Okay. And this is, I think, more of a Vendée based, even though it isn't the Vendée itself. There's probably another card for the Vendée coming in. But, yeah, I've got these internal risks at play. But we're talking about what amounts to probably a couple of core. So I can probably handle that. So then the question comes, what do the French want to do? I mean, conceivably, I could knock a Prussia or an Austria out of the war if I do this cleverly. Kind of a tricky point, right? I've played my raid as much as I really want to for now, but I also kind of want to break. And if I go down and take a break, I will probably find something to amuse myself down there. And the danger, of course, is that it will be an addictive type something. Fucking around with a chat bot or whatever, or maybe just lying down and trying to sleep, but I don't want to do that. I've gotten enough sleep, and I'm on a good schedule, or close to a good schedule, for tomorrow. So naturally, my sleep schedule kind of rotates around. There's sort of an inherent avoidance of being awake when I can do anything, or when I have to deal with people or anything like that. But outside of that, that's sort of my natural. Is like I go on like a 26.5-hour day and just slowly rotate through. That's what's happened before. But now, between once a week going dancing, where I have to be awake, all night, Friday night, and raid, which kind of wants me to be awake at like 5 p.m. and at 4 in the morning, and then to catch it, another time or so each day. And same with the other game. It also kind of wants me to be awake at 4 in the morning, a little before that. I'm sort of stuck in this, should be asleep during the daytime every fucking day. And it's hard to break that with these sort of constraints that are in place. Sometimes I was able to. I would take naps at about this time or whatever. But that's really bad for the Fridays. So like I can't do that on Thursday or Wednesday perhaps. And then when it comes around to Saturday and Sunday, things are just so screwed up on Saturday, where I sleep all day or whatever, no matter what. I don't know. But anyway, I don't feel like pulling another chit at this point. Like I feel like I've done a fairly significant move. The next move is going to probably be also fairly significant. The French, both sides have gotten their one chit played, which means I may not have many options. Like if I draw a 4 for the French, that's not going to let me move anything that's in existence anymore, except for this army. And I don't know if I'm in that much of a rush to like start taking attritional, 2-army group, but I could break it up into the 2 armies. I'm not sure I'm in that much of a rush in the game to start taking attrition on units just to try to press this advantage that I have this year. Okay, after a couple hours of distraction, we got a neutral naval counter. I'd forgotten to put these in earlier. maybe they're not even supposed to go into this scenario, but Britain and Spain need to be able to move their navies. And they're officially neutral right now. I repositioned their navies. So at least there's that. Get an activation, they move their way up here and take the fortress of Baden, but I'm leaving it undefended because I don't want to move. I don't want to lose a step off the infantry unit I have there. In some, sorry, not Baden, sorry, the Palatinate here. Mainz, oh fuck. But Blucher is nearby with a larger force, so he could actually come down and fight me, and that might be for the worst. However, I feel like if I can take the Palatinate, and if I look at its locations, this is all that it has, it's a worthwhile thing. I don't know if it's worth doing at this moment, but activating these armies for a force march feels like a bad idea. Everything else I think I'm going to just leave where it is. It's all doing good jobs. So for example, Lyon is important. I did shift out of Toulon, just in case the White Cockade or whatever it is, there's something that allows, yeah, it's the White Cockade that Toulon gets, anything that's there gets destroyed. Coalition activation comes up. Blucher has kind of a problem. In order to attack here, I would have to either cross a river or cross a bridge, which I assume is not a pleasant thing either for combat. Yeah, there's a -1 for crossing a bridge. Here it says, only if the attack has crossed the river by bridge or pontoons. Yeah. I could move to an area like here or here, but in either of those cases, there's a possibility of an interception. I don't really see a good act for Blucher to be able to deal with the Palatinate, and it's not that important. Now this is a coalition 2. I will have another movement. I still have the coalition 3 left, where I'll get to make that choice again. So I'm gonna hold off, see if he goes anywhere. If he was in the fortress, I would probably attack. But because he's out, you know, if he had rebuilt the fortress, he would be an even weaker force. But it feels iffy to try to chance it, and especially if the French are going to get more activations afterwards. So, the 4-point moves both came up. Neither side wanted to do anything in them. And then the Empire, or the French, got a 2-point move. I've shifted a couple of forces up to deal with the Cadoodle. No, it's Schwan's. Cadoodle's got to show up at some point. I saw his counter in here. And that means that there's a coalition land marker which will allow me to move Blucher now. And I may just take the -1 bridge crossing penalty. I feel like my odds are good outside of that. Blucher attacked, and despite having larger odds, it works out to 3-2, which doesn't actually help. And he ended up being at like, even on his own die roll, and he actually outrolled the French. But the French were at like +4. And it worked out being a defeat, a minor battle defeat. No leader lost checks. Nothing interesting. What's left in the cup? There's just 1 left? No, there's 2 left. Neutral land, I don't think anything wants to. And the coalition naval, and they don't have one. So that's the end of the turn, with the coalition land being the end action in the turn. I believe the Palatinate is in trouble at this point. But maybe it's only in winter. Come Conquest of Miners is only in winter. Okay. They wouldn't be able to build troops or anything while the French are there. So, yeah, no final attrition that I see. And I think we're just at the end of the summer turn. We go to the autumn. There's going to be a winter chit going back in. It has to come up twice, though. And I remove the chits, and we move to the next turn. And let's put some dice on that turn to remind me. And that's a good time for a break, I guess. So funny, I fuck around for 2 hours, right? And then I come up here and I play for 15 minutes. It's not like I'm playing raid or anything. I'm just wasting time. All right, back up to the, see, this is what's funny. Deploy new units and those returning from foreign wars. I guess returning from foreign wars. You can also buy non-combat unit stuff, I guess, although it's not well defined. But you're allowed to build armies, and so therefore I assume you can build engineers, which strangely enough cost the same as an army, even though the army contains an engineer, supply depots, stuff like that, as needed. I would say probably not fleets. But anyway, I'm just going over the what should and shouldn't be in the spring interphase, because honestly, it's in the diplomacy phase that the French are now forced to play the Chouans. British player sets up Cadoodle and the Chouans combat unit in Brittany or Normandy, but not in a fortress or city hex. I lied to you. Cadoodle is actually a commander. I thought this would be 2 combat units. It's not. He's a good commander, not army. Decent combat capability, but a really good maneuver capability. There's a card that I don't think has to stay out for any reason. We're here with the, I'm looking at this again. Remember, there's something that says it happens in the spring reinforcement and replacement phase. One of the things that was add new leaders and leaders previously wounded to the leader pool. This is not listed as spring only. Some of these things are. So the economics and budget, the event card, except for this, 1 public event per block is revealed, which is again up here, maybe? There just really isn't a strong sense of like trying to make this at all nailed down, even in the least. So we just do the best we can guessing. And I think I'm at the initiative phase. What I have to remember here, the winter quarters goes in, and coalition moved last, I believe. Coalition land, neutral land, coalition naval, winter quarters. Built a couple of chits and got an Empire Land 4, which I'm going to activate right now. But I realized I screwed something up. I have to spend $4. Declare Reims and the Palatinate. I grabbed a French control marker for the Palatinate, but honestly, I was a little uncareful. I picked an Austrian one. I should grab a Prussian on the other side, because Palatinate is Prussian controlled. And that helps kind of remind me of that. Makes it harder to fish for, though. And now I think I'm going to go hunt down Cadoodle. And I pin him up here in Normandy, where he'd have to give me an interception chance and deal with issues of trying to think what it is. Army areas of influence there. I got a problem with Cadoodle, and the Shuans. I'm gonna look to see if there's any special rules for them, but they're not in supply. They're not allowed to set up in a fortress. And they got a little bit of a problem. Now, historically, the Brits supplied these forces to some extent. And the naval supply might be able to help. But this card being triggered before the Brits come in, there's no one to really do that. And I'm worried that they may be in a lot of trouble. Oh, there are only 2 steps, so not a hell of a lot of trouble. And if I take Cherbourg, I can supply out of that. Walk away for a little bit. Kind of need to bathe, and rests are good. Here's another little problem with the way that my style of play, which is to come up, play for a few minutes, go away. I just threw a winter quarters marker. I can only draw 2. How am I going to remember that I've got one out already? I don't know. I guess I could put a siege +1 here and hope, sorry, not that. A siege +1 and hope that that reminds me that that is the winter quarters marker. I mean, obviously I could die or something, but I've got to get used to that. I'm up here, it's getting close on 3 a.m. I'm probably not going to play a hell of a lot more tonight. This is a time when I should be playing my secondary video game thing, and maybe get some sleep in and whatever. I get myself a Coalition 3 marker, which will allow me to move most of the coalition forces. All of them. Looks like all of them. Everything I want to. But first, I'm going to move Cadoodle. He's going to move up to Cherbourg. I believe before he has to undertake the siege, though, he has to make an attrition check. All right. So he has 2 strength points. Pretty sure none of these are going to... I have spent 4 movement points or less, so I get a -1. At this point, that's a weird thing, right? You make your attrition check before combat or at the end of your move. Is this national territory? Sure. I don't know what to define it as, whether this particular rebellion is all of France or is only Normandy and Brittany, but he's in it, whatever it is. It's not clear. It is an out of supply force, though, so that gets me to -3. Wouldn't have to check if it wasn't. And I wouldn't say that they count as French. It's not the right date anyway. -3, I can't possibly get a hit. Okay, so I spent 1 movement point there, and now it's 1 movement point per siege activity. It was eventually successful, although there were some iffy chances because I kept getting assaults on here. And with an out of supply force, there's a big -4 to making an attack, well, to fighting. And then we relinquished one of our steps to take it over, because without it, we're useless. But honestly, that army is just going to wipe us out. It's not a real factor. This rebellion is pretty damn minor. I will now go on to take a look at what the hell the rest of the coalition wants to do, if they want to at this point. We're close to winter quarters, so if we have anything we really want to do, we probably want to move. Do a hell of a lot. I pushed Blucher back up here, and Wormster has gathered his army here in the pass to do whatever it can. Really just kind of saying don't go into Italy with that more than anything else. You know, any attacks on the pass, they might be able to overwhelm one of these. But Wormster has a full army, 16 steps. You had to actually leave one behind here. That's quick. Another coalition marker came up. But then the winter quarters came up. And that means that the turn is over. The French aren't going to get to advance at all. It isn't actually winter, so the Palatinate does not fall at this point. It's still, you know, a non-productive territory for whatever that means. I don't know. But yeah, is there any final attrition that needs to be taken? These guys moved, so they don't need to check. Everybody else should be in supply. Which to me means that all we do is pick the chits up, move the marker into winter, and we're done with another turn. Like I said, this was shorter than I expected. The French did not get a chit other than their 4 movement chit. So this was probably a very harsh autumn. You know that I like systems where movement is not certain. I feel like the winter quarters especially makes that the case. It makes for an interesting little twist to things. Now, actual movement points, etc., are certain, which I don't really like, but I also don't feel like the game is granular enough to give you too much, other than, you know, the extended movement, whether you take attrition or not, which is all pretty standard. Feel like maybe, you know, there should be, after you move a certain number of hexes, you can roll a die and see if you can move an extra hex or something like that. I just feel like commands quite often head in a direction but don't make it to their goal, right? Even when not confronted with enemies or whatnot. But I do find the twist of, yeah, you don't know when the turn's going to end and stuff like that to be very, very enticing. Of course, the summer turn doesn't work out that way at all, which, okay. But anyway, I wanted to touch on that just because it is a factor that I like in this game. This, you don't know, you know, when your forces are going to be able to move. You know, whether you're going to be able to move all your forces or not. And in this case, the French actually could not move anything except the one army that they moved. That was the only force they had that has a sufficient initiative commander. Afternoon, pretty day, but I'm going to be going out later, so I don't really feel the need to go experience the day. This is the thing, half my week is just off limits, right? You know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm not going to do anything on those. All right. Let's see if we can get the winter turn done and maybe even clear off the year completely. Anything exciting in the interface? Nobody's got events they need to play. I don't think anybody wants to play around with money. Again, the Shuans, they're just in trouble. That card is just not, didn't cause anything that's causing any real problems for the French. So I think we're just really at the initiative pool. I'm going to do a quick check on leaders, see if I want to fiddle things around there, because I have that opportunity to replace leaders during reinforcements. Sack them and replace them. Right? Yeah, after leader dismissal, sure. They're shifting around. French pulling their really good commander off the army so I don't lose him off the army of Spain. Actually, unfortunately that means, oh no, I have a secondary there. Fine. And I'm okay with this. I may actually move him there, but right now I don't feel terribly stressed with the French armies. The Austrians repositioned some of their commanders to to be able to hold an extra corps here and stuff like that. I was considering getting Blucher out of there because he's so important later on, but I kind of want strength point. I kind of want people who have a capability to be available. And honestly, I shouldn't know that Blucher is going to be a magically good leader, or a very good leader, at least, for the Prussians later in the game. At least that's my kind of view on it. I'm always torn by this kind of thing because it's like, you know, if American Civil War has it too. You know, oh no, I lost Jackson, you know. Especially if you're playing with the optional rule that makes Lyons and Jackson better, those losses become important. Now, the big deal with both of them is they both died young. Well, at lower ranks than they could conceive, you know, than their advanced markers. Lyons particularly so, but like the idea of another good commander for the Confederates at the highest ranks is actually a pretty big thing, whereas the Union, well, see, the Union has Sherman and Grant, and they could die early. Anyway, that's the whole thing. You could lose leaders at a fairly low rank that, you know, in the same way as you can here. But here, I don't feel Blucher is terribly useful. And also, I don't need to use him to have his rank increased, which is a big deal. In American Civil War, you have to use those leaders to get their rank up. So it's like a risk thing. But I mean, it's a required risk. Here, it's not a required risk, so I don't know what I'm babbling about. All right, we're going to start pulling. I don't want to bore you with the details of the pull. I'll bore you with my inane conversation instead. Remember, if the winter counter comes up on the first draw, it doesn't count. So there's going to be at least one phase, but it might just be like a neutral move or something that's not going to affect things. Instead, we got the most permissive of the French counters, and I started out by sieging and taking Cherbourg. I'm leaving it unrepaired because I'm going to pay to build, to repair it. I did have to kind of cheat and move a supply depot from this army to that army. I didn't realize that there'd be anywhere in France I wouldn't be in supply. But yeah, at the time that I moved there, I would have realized, yeah, there's this possibility, fine. And I'll continue with the rest of the movements. Gotta swap pipes. But yeah, it was a fairly easy siege. I got an assault on the first roll. It was nearly a 5-1. Well, it was like a 3-1. And the odds were just so good. But there's some chance that you lose something, right? So, but yeah, they didn't serve any purpose. I put the Chouans over and Cadoodle over in the box. If there's some other way that they can get into the game again, fine, I'll dig them back out. But I would rather not have them messing in my counter trays if they're like, as far as I can tell, it's a one-use card. The card is gone. I really doubt that they're going to come back. Now, as per the rules, one could make an argument that Cadoodle is still around. Because, like, leaders don't get killed after a siege or destroyed or whatever. In this particular case, like in most cases, you're talking formed military units making deals, whatever. In this particular case, I just don't see Cadoodle sitting around. He's not part of a minor that's aligned with anyone or anything. I don't think he can have an effect without his unit, but things are kind of fuzzy in the rules, and like, but common sense tells me he would have been hanged, guillotined, in a way that like British or Prussian officers that are captured would be exchanged as prisoners. And that's just that's just completely abstracted away. Some games have you capture leaders and exchange them and everything. I'm thinking here campaigns of Marlborough. Here, nah, they just come back. I don't think there's a lot I want to do, but I think I do want to make a jump and get to Blucher. And I can do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My supply wagon can move 6. I can draw supplies from the Palatinate. It's a link up here, since I own the Fortress of Metz, and maybe have a detachment there. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. And take Cleves. I can march through Flanders, unlike in World War I, without the Brits getting upset. I just can't attack Antwerp or Brussels. So, yeah. Free passage, man. Can I? I think I might have to declare war on Holland, which... See, this is the weird thing. Like, why... Oh, no. Holland doesn't exist. Yeah, this is Austrian territory. I'm fine. And as I advance in from this hex, Blucher tries to withdraw instead of taking it as a siege. This is a weird situation. The main reason is because he's a good leader for withdrawing. But there's a limitation of only plus or minus 4, and I roll a 6. He's caught in battle, which is probably the worst of all possible situations. He's caught trying to retreat. Blucher's army was wiped out, but he survived. That's probably the more important of the two. Probably why I should have switched leaders. And Cologne is taken, which means Cleves and the Palatinate will fall. Again, I'm kind of holding off on bringing the Brits into the war as long as I can. There's the possibility that I could, force the Austrians to pull out of Italy and defend themselves, or maybe knock Prussia out of the war, or whatever, rather than risk the Brits coming in. And I just think that's of value. That's it for this activation, Chit. The next one will be a coalition one, but the coalition armies have been so badly defeated. The army of Spain here, this can turn down and largely defend it against Wurmster coming across in Italy. If he wants to chance it, he can. And if he gets a victory, that might cause a callback of Kellerman. No, not Kellerman. Who's the army here? Oops. Can't read them. Dunmarel. And who is this? Heck. Or Hawk. I can't tell if that's an O or an E. I don't know these revolutionary generals at all. Just waiting for Nappy to come. Activation, the coalition gets a 2-pointer. And I guess the big move is I decide to push Wurmster back towards Austria. I'm afraid of a French advance by the army here. Now, this may not be necessary in the sense that it's winter, I'm going to get to build a new army, but it's also not really that threatening, because by moving Wurmster back, there's nothing army-wise that can break through the Alps. So if I need to keep an army in Italy, I can. I also fell back out of Baden, potentially giving that up, but I just don't see it being safe to be up front there with the army within striking range. It would be a forced march in winter, so it probably isn't that dangerous. And now I'm actually exposing Baden to Kellerman, who could take it. But the problem with that is, we did recover this. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking the Palatinate, I hadn't rebuilt the fortress, but I had. So we'll see. We'll see if they get additional moves. And also falling back out of Flanders. You know, it's just an ugly situation when you don't have the force to face your enemy. And the thing is, I have enough strength points, but I can't coordinate them. And this is where I really like this as compared to War and Peace. In War and Peace, if the troops are around, you can farm an army. Here, you got to keep that money available to build that army. So if you've lost all your armies and you don't have money to reorganize, you're in a position where your whole force really can't hold up against the enemy and you have to fall back. I really like the implications of that. To get the next activation, they march in and take Baden. Now, I expended the last infantry step I had to garrison it. Might not be necessary, but here's the thing. This is a decent sized force. It could contest me. It's the army I'm worried about, not anything else. I've exposed Mainz. It's possible that these forces could come down and siege Mainz and retake Palatinate. Now, Baden is a special case. It is Baden and Württemberg at this point. I looked up the surrender rules, and Baden would surrender, but it would give up, and it would give up its capital province in this case, because that's adjacent to French territory. But Württemberg would stay as a neutral. It would leave the war. It's kind of an interesting combination, and I'd have to hunt the Württembergians out and put them in the neutral and all that. Onward to more Chitpulls. Remember, this could end at any point, though. Russians move down and siege Palatinate. This is a risky position. The army could come hit them, but again, it would have to force march. Maybe I don't want to do that, you know. If I can hold out, unless this is going to force march to siege some more, then Palatinate will just, you know, it'll surrender anyway, I think. See, these two conditions would suffice for a surrender even though the Prussians are there. It feels a little weird if that happens, but I don't think I'm forced out. I think I can continue the siege and try to seize the territory back, as it were, for whatever that matters. And the winter quarters comes up before another land phase, which means we hit final attrition. I don't think there are any situations that require anything to be done with that. There's nothing demoralized kicking around. So now we get conquest of minor powers for the first point. And we've got two. One is the Palatinate. And we have to look on the little chart here. Does the Palatinate have any troops? The Palatinate does not have any troops. It's part of Baden. I thought Württemberg was part of Baden. No, Württemberg is a separate ally of Austria. Okay, so we conquered all. I think because we conquered all of it, and not just its capital city, we have actually conquered both Baden and the Palatinate, and we can absorb both of them. Not absolutely certain. Is it located within the Grand Empire area? It is not. Is it adjacent? Both are adjacent to France. Okay. Now, if it has no combat units, it's kind of a weird situation. I think that means if it has none available to it. as opposed to none on the board. Baden has combat units. Palatinate does not. So Palatinate, I'm going to remove this control marker from the capital and put it in the Palatinate itself to indicate that I've just absorbed that. Baden, on the other hand, its land units are destroyed and removed from the game. And I can reinstate the minor. I'm not allowed to absorb Baden because it has troops and it's not part of the Grand Empire. So I have to create Baden as a minor country in France's hands now. Which means I have to hunt down their units if they're on the board and whatever. Marked the Palatinate already. Baden itself, we move the Allied marker there. Is it a satellite? And what does that mean? Satellites can't be fucked with. I don't think it is yet, but I think it can be via the diplomacy. Okay. I wouldn't be able to do it now anyway. It says it applies only to minor powers allied to France and is announced at the beginning of the conquest phase, which means I can't make it a satellite anyway if I were conquering it. Palatinate does not have a diplomacy counter as far as I know. And that means, now this is kind of interesting, only those minor powers sharing a border with France and those minor powers created during the game. That "and" could be interpreted two ways. The way I've been interpreting it is, if it shares a border with France, or, it's a minor power that shares a border with France, or it's a minor power created during the game, right? That's how I'm reading that "and," i.e. those minor powers adjacent to France and those minor powers that were created during the game. But it is sort of an ambiguous wording, because it could be only those minor powers sharing a border with France and those minor powers. So sharing a border with France and those minor powers that were created in the game. Taking that strictly, it would mean it would have to be adjacent to both France and the minor power and a minor power created during the game. Another way of looking at it would be I could absorb them into the empire if they were adjacent to one of those minor powers created during the game. I don't think that's the meaning at all. I think the meaning is it's got to be adjacent to France's original borders, or it's one of the minors that's created in the game. But that particular wording is really disturbing. Reading it technically, reading it as literally as possible, it would mean that the minor country, in order to be absorbed, would have to be both adjacent to France and adjacent to a minor that was created during the game. I'm pretty sure that's not what they mean, though. And so, using discretion, whatever. All right, so we have taken Palatinate, we have made Baden our own minor ally. We have their core now. It was not already destroyed, it came from here. I had fled to Ulm. Bad move. I had actually been in Ulm beforehand, which is the thing. It was Ried, the Bavarians, who fell back. Redeployment of units belonging to the defeated side's former allies. I don't think that happens with the conquest of a minor. This is diplomacy. We're looking for conquest. In the effects of conquest, there's nothing about troops being pulled away with minor powers. I believe there is when a major power is defeated. But remember, when a major power is defeated, it becomes neutral. When a minor is defeated in this way, it doesn't really. So I believe those Prussians get to stay there. Reinstating, exchanging provinces or annexations, creation of new states, none of that is allowed. It's going to be 1794. As soon as I clean up the activation markers. And then we go into another, spring, new cards added to the deck. French get to pick one. And yeah, I need to look at the order of the French pick, whether they get to pick it before or after cards are dealt out. I think it's before. And yeah, the French are definitely ascendant now. Things looked pretty bad for them at the end of last year, but their production and Carnot allowed them to turn this around completely, take Baden out of the war, along with the Palatinate, and what about Cleves? Cleves is mine too. Forgot about that. Cleves is, it's a K for some reason. It is a Prussian minor. I'm not adjacent to France. I have to see, does Cleves have a diplomacy marker? They do. So they also join France. They have no troops. So I could absorb them if France were adjacent to them. But France is not adjacent to them, so they cannot be absorbed. Because it's original national borders only, right? See, here's the thing. Palatinate is part of because the difference is Cleves, as a Prussian ally, was giving no money to the Prussians. As a part of French territory, it would be giving its income to the French. So now, what is the definition of national territory? It doesn't say original national territory. So Palatinate is now national territory of France. Wait. Where was that? Where was that restriction? Oh, that restriction was to satellites that I was looking at. Satellites is something different. Satellites are minor powers allied to France. Only those sharing a border with France. Yeah. I think I'm able to absorb Cleves as well. We don't have a control marker there. We leave the no troops, but we put a French control marker in Cleves. I think Cleves has been absorbed as well as Palatinate because Palatinate's part of my national territory now. As a further reminder, I'm giving the Cleves counter to the French rather than having it up there. Normally it would be a minor power, but it has no troops, so yeah, I believe I can absorb it. All right. Again, most of these things, I'm really stressing about them because the rules feel kind of fuzzy about these things. But honestly, they're not going to have a huge effect on the game. Cleves is going to give me an extra buck every year, you know? But they do add up, you know? Otherwise, Cleves, like it was with Prussia, does nothing for me. It's just territory that, like, is in the war. Cheated. Chouans could not have been played because King of France, Executed in Terror have not been played. I don't feel like I can go back and reverse that. This is a matter of these being spread in different pages. The part of the reason I'm looking at this is I ran across the directory, which cancels terror and Committee of Public Safety events. Now, I'm not sure what that means, cancels. The Committees of Public Safety, I don't really want to have happen, or I don't really want to have go away. So the French are probably not going to pull the directory. The terror, I think, is a pro-Allied card, but not a terribly effective one. If the French lose battles, they could be executed. I don't remember who it was who was executed, or yeah, I'm pretty sure he was. A major commander on the west, on the East Front was called up as having, you know, been a traitor essentially, and was executed for that. But I don't remember who. And it may be the guy who's there, that Demonier or whatever. But yeah, you know, we're kind of stumbling through this, trying to match things together. I don't find it completely unbelievable that there would be a revolt of the Chouans, or even more so of the Vendée. Although the Vendée does not have that restriction on them. But otherwise, yeah, the French would have just been holding that card as kind of a burden. Not really, but just as an extra card that they've got to hold, they can't get rid of, that they know that there's a problem there that would erupt someday. As it was, I was able to neutralize it relatively quickly. I'm not too worried about the little screw up. Again, most of what's happening here is on the military side, right? And I think most of that is not going to be too affected by these cards. But keeping Britain out of the game feels like a pretty good strategy, to tell you the truth. Just like it does in Balance of Power. All right, I guess we'll load this up, and then it will be close enough to raid time that I don't really want to... everything all together. I don't really want to start another turn at all.